I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
I'm Holly.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 57th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. Tonight we will be talking about the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, Saints of Imperfection. Written by Kirsten Beyer and directed by David Barrett. So we're just going to go down the line and give our opening statements. We'll each give a little non-spoilerish reaction and just state some very general thoughts about this episode. And I'll go ahead and go first. This was the first time in season 2 where I kind of felt disappointed with Discovery upon my initial watch of this episode. There were just like some choices made that I didn't really agree with. Upon rewatching it a couple times now, I've kind of gotten over a lot of that, but I still have a lot of conflicted feelings about this episode. This is the most we've seen of Section 31 on Discovery, or arguably ever in canonical Star Trek. This is also the most we've seen of the mycelial networks. They do explain a lot of stuff, flesh some stuff out, and a lot of this is kind of in directions that I wish they hadn't chosen. I do want to be more excited about this episode because I do feel it was very well made. This was a good hour of television. And so I'm really hoping as we go down the line that some of y'all like this more than me and kind of like cheer me up.
Right. This is exciting because nobody knows what anybody's going to say.
So Dave, how about you go ahead and share your thoughts?
All right. Unfortunately, you've stolen my thoughts again, Fatheree.
God damn it. You have to stop copying me.
You have to stop going first.
Okay.
We should have started with Holly, and it would have been a better answer. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe she... Well, we'll see. So I think the reason...
We're all going to say the exact same thing.
I think my issues with it were not the same as yours, though. The Section 31 stuff and some of those things that might have some continuity issues with Trek do kind of bug me, just from what little I know of Section 31. But actually, I weirdly just felt, and I've only seen it once, a little emotionally detached from the events. And I'm actually still puzzling out why. I can't quite figure that out. Maybe during the course of this podcast we'll figure it out. But I almost sort of felt like Tilly's rescue was sort of perfunctory. Culber's return was almost perfunctory. Well acted, but I just... they were sort of expected events, and I didn't quite get involved in the moral... I wanted a tighter moral quandary about what they're doing in the mycelial network and what hard choices they had to make. And instead there was a lot more hugs and love stuff, and I didn't... Maybe that was it. I wasn't quite as into that as as I would have been them making what I think would be tougher decisions. That said, you're right. It's a well-made episode, lots of memorable scenes, and I actually did like the Section 31 stuff in it, even if it was a slight rethink of what Section 31 is. Brian?
I love this episode. I thought it was great.
There we go.
It was weird. It was exactly the sort of thing I'd run in my Star Trek role-playing game. If you're stuck in my Star Trek role-playing game, it's a lot like one of this every week. But I loved boldly going where no one has gone before. I loved the idea of the ship half stuck. I love the fact that I felt like I was watching something that almost could have been a Doctor Who episode. And I loved the stakes. I loved I honestly thought, okay, Culper's back, but we're going to lose him. And no, we kept him. And I was like, yeah, okay, that was cool.
They actually had me on the line there. Yeah. I was like, well, at first I was like, there's no way they're going to do it. And then I was like, oh, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how, but then yeah, we got it.
I will say the first, 10 minutes had me rolling my eyes at a bunch of sloppy writing or perhaps stuff that isn't quite as well thought out as it should have been. But then once it got rolling, I kind of felt like I was with it with everything else. And it went for it. It was like, we are going to totally go stick the ship into the mushroom, and we're going to go into the mushroom, and we are all about the Alice in Wonderland. And that's the only way to do a story like this, is completely commit. And I love the complete commitment to this idea and everything they were doing.
Just real quick, just want to throw in one little thing about that is kind of something we saw a lot of in the original series, where they would do the most absurd ideas, like a Nazi planet.
Yeah,
they would just go 100% into it.
Yeah,
do it. Just lean into it, no matter how far-fetched it might seem.
Yeah.
So that's very true to a certain Star Trek tradition.
Yeah. Ollie?
Overall, I really liked this episode. It kept me engaged the entire time. The only thing I really didn't like is that we in dealing with all the weirdness and stuff, it seemed like we didn't have a lot of comment on the human condition and more deeper issues, which is kind of what I like about Star Trek. But I did actually think the episode was very well made. It kept me engaged the entire time, and I always wanted to know what happened next. So overall, it was a good story.
I think the deeper issues thing might be a little bit what was bugging me as well, which is, at first they set up something like the Star Trek Next Generation warp story where, they were tearing fabrics in the universe.
Oh yeah, force of nature.
Right. A storyline which would kind of just get shuffled off so that they could ignore it for the future. Which is we
just assumed that they made more efficient warp engines.
If you have to assume that they were ignoring it.
They went green.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually, some people have said that's why Voyager has the folding warp nacelles, because they're part of the new, more
and if they just said that would be cool, right. But they never, it was in the writer's guide and it was never in the show.
As a concept, it worked exactly like real environmental policy. We were really on board the idea
and then we just ignore it.
And then we just ignored it and kind of moved on.
Oh, so wonderfully cynical.
Except that the reason we usually ignore environmental policy has to do with people that have money that don't want changes to be made.
Right.
Where does that fall in the United Federation?
What's the Federation's excuse?
Right.
Slow warp drive sucks. It already takes weeks to get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean that was the problem.
I wanted to take months.
What they were really taking away was one of their handiest plot devices, which. The mycelial thing is, of course, the traveling the mycelial network is the disco equivalent, and I think I wanted to see that as a moral conundrum. I don't want a repeat of that episode though, and so I get why they wouldn't want to directly repeat that. But this was a more personal story to be told about it, and less of a weighty moral issue.
Okay, well, if we're done with our opening statements, we'll go ahead and go straight into our warp speed summary. Just quickly recap everything that happened in this episode. So you're going to get tons of spoilers now.
I could do the spore drive summary.
Yeah.
Culber's back. Over to you.
That's your displacement hub drive jump.
We'll add that as a recurring feature.
Yeah. That would be great.
But as for the slower...
You'll do the too long didn't read.
As for the slower warp speed summary.
Yeah.
Hit it.
So this season's search for Spock continues as the crew of the Discovery have finally caught up to Spock's shuttle. Captain Pike and company are able to capture the shuttle and bring it on board, but surprise, Spock is nowhere to be seen. Instead, off the shuttle steps ex-Emperor Philippa Georgiou, formerly of the Terran Empire and currently agent of Section 31. Turns out she is also Spock hunting. You see, Section 31 is also after Spock. And Pike seems very familiar with Section 31. He even knows their commanding officer, the mysterious Leyland. Leyland contacts Pike and Georgiou and lets them know that he is sending over a Section 31 liaison to the Discovery. And that liaison is then revealed to be none other than Ash Tyler. This makes for an awkward reunion between Tyler and Burnham. But enough about Section 31 and the search for Spock. It is time for the search for Tilly. After last week, the crew have been mourning the loss of Tilly after she disappeared into the mycelial cocoon created by May. But Stamets has determined that the cocoon is actually a biological transporter, and that Tilly must be alive and well in the mycelial network. Stamets formulates a plan to partially jump the disco into the mycelial network so that they can rescue Tilly. Captain Pike gives an inspirational speech about Starfleet having each other's backs, and they go to black alert. The ship does its spore jump fidget spinner thing, then its port side disappears into the mycelial network, while the starboard side is left suspended in normal space. Stamets and Burnham cross over to the mycelial side. They have 1 hour to find Tilly and get her back before the local life forms, the Jossip, those are the little floaty mycelial things like May was, they're going to eat through the hull of the ship. So the clock is ticking. Now in the network, Tilly has been hanging out there with May. May says that she has brought her there to help save the Jossip from a monster that's been attacking her people. And they see the USS Discovery partially appear in the mycelial plane, and they board the ship. May says that the monster is there. May and Tilly meet up with Stamets and Burnham on the ship. However, this isn't the only reunion between Discovery crewmates. Dr. Hugh Culber is also alive in the mycelial network, and May says he is the monster the Jossip are after. Stamets, now reunited with his love, concludes that when Culber was killed by Vok, a mycelial copy of Culber was created out of the connection Stamets has with the mycelial network and the desire he had to have Hugh back. The vision of Dr. Culber Stamets has been seeing during spore jumps is actually this guy, on the mycelial side. And left alone in the network, he has been keeping himself safe from the Jossip by covering himself in the bark of a tree toxic to them. But that clock is still a-ticking to get back, and the stakes get even higher when the Discovery starts slipping out of normal space and into the mycelial network. The only safe place to be during the crossover is in engineering, in the reaction cube that Stamets uses for spore jumps. The rest of the crew must stay on the starboard side of the ship, and if it sinks all the way into the network, they will be killed, just like what happened to the crew of the USS Glenn. Tyler makes an emergency phone call on his Section 31 comm badge to Captain Leyland and the Section 31 ship. They show up and lock tractor beams onto the disco. They are able to keep the ship from sinking any further into the mycelial network, but can only hold it for a few minutes. Back on the mycelial side, the crew members attempt to come back through the reaction cube. Unfortunately, Dr. Culber cannot cross. His new body is made of material from the mycelial world. He can't cross over into normal space. May explains that mycelial matter is different from our universe's matter. That's why she had to bond with Tilly's brain to exist outside of the network. Culber and Stamets start to say their goodbyes, but Tilly and Burnham come up with a Star Trek science solution. They can use Culber's DNA to recreate his body in the mycelial cocoon. Doing this will sever the connection between May and Tilly, but May agrees to let her go and allow Culber to return. Stamets, Burnham, and Tilly cross back over. The ship black alerts completely out of the network, and from the cocoon emerges the resurrected Hugh Culber. On board the Section 31 ship, Leyland and Pike meet secretly with Admiral Cornwell. The Admiral lets them know they have new information on the red bursts. They have discovered traces of tachyon radiation. This could mean time travel, it could mean cloaking devices. They're not sure, but they do know that it is even more important that they find Spock, as he might be the key to unlocking the mystery of the red bursts. She orders them to work together to find Spock. Meanwhile, back on the Discovery in the science lab, Giorgio and Burnham have a chat via hologram. Burnham is very concerned for her brother, knowing that this evil dictator from the mirror universe is chasing him down. Giorgio says that she won't bring any unnecessary harm to Spock, but can we really trust her? Burnham assumes her post back on the bridge, and the episode ends with Tyler, Colbert, and Tilly all back aboard the Discovery. Roll credits. So, I think like the big elephant in the room for the continuity side of things with this episode that I just want to like clear out first is probably the use of Section 31 and how Burnham and Pike both clearly seem to know what Section 31 is right from the beginning of the episode.
Right.
And that they can have a Section 31 liaison operating on the bridge of a ship in front of the entire crew.
Right. It really very much likens them to like a CIA sort of organization.
But this is exactly what we saw in season 1. They had Section 31 people on Discovery wearing Section 31 uniform paraphernalia in season 1.
Yeah, and I hated that, and I was willing to overlook that.
Okay.
But
it was there.
But I mean, you can't say it's a contradiction. It's already been established.
Well, here's my question. As someone who has not seen the episodes of, I think, either Enterprise or DS9 where they were introduced, does that fit with the vision that we saw in either of those?
No. In fact, like, the conflict we have here is in Deep Space Nine, when this is brought up to the attention of the highest-ranking officer on the station, Captain Sisko. He has no idea about Section 31. He can't get any answers. He tries to contact his superiors. Everyone just kind of brushes him off. He's not able to find anything.
When he tries calling his superiors, they say they would not confirm it did, or they wouldn't confirm whether it did or did not exist.
Yeah, or people would tell him
that's
that
an
they
X-Files answer.
Yeah. So they basically say, yes, it exists, but we're not going to admit that.
But wasn't the implication that the Discovery was kind of a section involved with Section 31 from the beginning?
That's how I took it.
That was just from in episode 3, Context for Kings, when they do show a guy with a black badge. At the time, we didn't know what the black badges were.
Yeah. That's what I was leaning to.
Yeah.
That was the simplest explanation.
That was the same conclusion that I think I came to at the time.
Yeah.
But it's still really weird to have like Section 31 talked about if we know within 100 years from now they're going to be completely erased from Starfleet.
Is it possible like that could work together and just in the notion that they put their heads down a little bit lower?
I just sort of assume that sometime between here and the 24th century, Section 31 is officially disbanded, and also the people, given the security, the bridge crew of Discovery probably already has pretty high security clearances, or they wouldn't be allowed to mess around with Section 31 in season 1. They wouldn't be using the super top secret drive with a black alert. I'm kind of guessing that, the bridge crew was already cleared as far as, and then they brought Tyler on board, but that was Lorca. So.
These are all assumptions that we're making, though. Like, what if at some point we see a civilian who knows about Section 31, or we see, like, a Starfleet officer on another ship or something?
Well, it depends on what level of officer we're talking about. Pike talks about how number 1 gets information from everyone and gets favors from everyone. So the idea that number 1 could have provided Pike with information about the existence of Section 31 seems completely plausible to me when they've established that they've got this.
It almost kind of feels like if you had an episode of Star Trek where people didn't know what the CIA was back on Earth. Like, how do you completely eradicate all those...
Well, it's a branch of Starfleet intelligence, is my understanding. So it's just, do you know about this one little branch of Starfleet intelligence? Admiral Ross not only knew about it, but was working with them in Deep Space Nine. And Admiral Cornwell is working with them here.
I kind of like Cornwell being involved with them because I think she's kind of a shitty admiral for wanting to genocide the Klingon people.
It's the 23rd century. All the admirals are shitty.
So her being like this gray, morally ambiguous Section 31 commanding admiral, to me, like, that kind of fixes the problems I had with her previously.
Okay, but I agree.
I've got a question.
What's up?
So they were communicating with Leland and his ship on the main view screen on the Discovery. Random. All the bridge crew members were seeing him. They might have not known the specifics, but did Section 31 get mentioned in there?
Well, I mean, they have a Section 31 liaison in a weird black uniform standing next to them.
So yeah, like any one of those
But they
people
crossed this bridge back in season 1 when they had Section 31 people assigned to the ship.
And I'm going to give the show an opportunity to fix itself. And, like, I'm hoping that they have an idea how to clear this up. You know, we kind of went through this in season 1, where they go to the mirror universe when Kirk didn't know what the mirror universe was. Just a decade later, and we find out, oh yeah, that was all kept under wraps intentionally. You know, I'm hoping that the writers have a plan. It's just, the reason why it bothers me so much is I liked Section 31 being the more secret thing. Like, before, all we would see is just, like, 2 operatives. If you don't count, like, the Kelvin timeline stuff, we've only seen, like, 2 Section 31 operatives. It's just, like, one guy alone, and it's very, very secretive, and they're very mysterious, and that's a big part of what makes it interesting. You get the impression that
he had his whole ship, a ship all to his own, and...
Well, I mean, like, you don't know. Like, yeah, like, maybe this guy, like, this guy would just, like, show up. The character Sloan on DS9.
Yeah.
He would just, like, show up. No one knew, like, where he came from, and he would just have, like, these one-on-one conversations, often with Dr. Bashir, or maybe exclusively with Dr. Bashir.
Yeah, exclusively.
But, yeah. Or, you know...
Until the Romulan episode, and then he was undercover pretending to be somebody else.
And then we had Harris on Enterprise, and you just... It's always more interesting, you know, what you can imagine, what's going on behind the scenes that I'm not seeing.
Well, it does... It seems like it makes Starfleet, as I was always a little bit worried when they announced the show, Starfleet seems less scrupulous if they have an overt CIA kind of division that everybody knows about.
Yeah.
I would like it better if there's a conspiracy that's managed to continue operating.
It's not everybody. Michael didn't know what a black badge was when she came on board Discovery, right? Didn't she ask what's a black badge?
That was one of the other convicts.
Oh, one of the other... Okay, never mind. Sorry. You couldn't remember.
But, I mean, you can assume, well, she probably didn't know, but then she might have been briefed at some point on Discovery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of cool if, like, the Federation doesn't have, like, this officially sanctioned CIA group. And the one that exists is a rogue faction. I kind of like that because it kind of shows, like, the Federation doesn't think it needs that because, you know, they have these ideals. But then, like, the practicality of it is that they would have some people who feels like that is necessary. And so they kind of have, like, their own secret one in the background. But it kind of makes, like, the Federation better than, say, like, the Romulans with the Tal Shiar or the Cardassians with the Obsidian Order.
Well, there's certainly a different level of scale between the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar and Section 31. If somebody told me Section 31 was, like, 200 people, I could totally believe that. Whereas there's way more Tal Shiar agents than there are, you know, there'd have to be, like, thousands of them at least.
I'm curious, Holly, do you...
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in exploring the theme of does the Federation have to have a Section 31? I mean, I would kind of like the story to conclude that it doesn't, and I wonder what, not just about Section 31, but what happens between the 23rd and the 24th century, because the humans in the 23rd century are pretty much like us. Right. And the humans in the 24th century do a better job of listening to the better angels of their nature. Mm-hmm. And while I don't actually believe that humanity is probably going to ever listen to the better angels of our nature in that way, I would like the show to explore what it would be like if we did.
Right, and it's an aspirational.
Right, and to call out the immoral stuff. So the direction I would like to see is that maybe they conclude that we don't need Section 31 and that the Federation's a hypocrite to their ideals, and that maybe the reasons in the future Section 31 is so secret is because of something that was concluded.
It's like been taken officially off the books.
Because we say, you know, Guantanamo, that was a really bad idea. We shouldn't have been doing that. We closed it down. But Section 31 just kind of operates in secret. And so I would much rather us spend a lot of time, like, we see seeds of the better angels of our nature in this crew, despite all their flaws. So I would much rather see them listening, you know, thinking about what kind of people we want to be and what kind of morals we want to have, and to conclude that Section 31 is immoral as part of the show, and to decide to discontinue it.
Well, when we were talking about the Section 31 show, we kind of mused over this notion of, like, wouldn't it be great if the show was about them, from within deciding they wanted to dismantle it or ending with its destruction or something.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be an opportunity to tell a story like that with the show coming.
I do think that show will be where they're going to do that story, though.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen on Discovery.
Yeah, you could, and if you just looking at the end of Star Trek 6, if you assume that was a Section 31 plot, you could easily imagine that left Section 31 gutted by the end of that evidence of that movie. Because all the admirals that they end up being implicated, it would be really easy to imagine that pretty much the whole organization was at least crippled to the point where it took years to get back into any sort of level of power or ability after that. After the events of Star Trek 6. I guess the other point I would say is, you said this is the biggest we've ever seen Section 31. No. Star Trek Into Darkness is definitely the biggest.
I said if you don't look at the Kelvin side.
Well, the first time.
Yeah, when they had
compared to the way
Section...
compared to the massive underground complexes and the huge starship that the Vengeance that they had built, I was like, this is pretty mild compared to what we've seen in Section 31. This is still dialed way back from how bad it could be. But we're the head of Starfleet.
But Father,
the head of Starfleet is running Section 31.
If they don't dial it back a little bit at some point in the next few years of the various shows set in and around this era, you'll be vengeful.
I'll be as disappointed as I was when Enterprise showed Romulan cloaking devices, when Balance of Terror makes it very clear that Romulan cloaking devices are a brand new thing.
Yeah.
So that was what ticked you off about Enterprise?
That was one of the few... That's one of the problems you have when you do, like, these prequel shows. Is
Right, you want to show all the good stuff, even if, like, the good stuff is clearly meant to be a first-time discovery.
No. My problem with Enterprise was the whole Xindi plot arc.
Yeah. I actually consider that an improvement over the first two seasons. But...
Well, that's a sad thing, but I got mad because it seemed like Star Trek, rather than causing us to question the assumptions of our culture, was instead becoming a piece of propaganda.
It became propaganda for the Bush Doctrine, and that's when I had problems with it too.
And I did not want to watch the show after that.
But then the fourth season was so good.
A friend of mine told me that that they basically felt that Trip was a stand-in for George Bush. Not just mannerisms, not literally meant to be him or anything.
Which is a shame because I thought he was kind of cute.
What I've seen, I like
Bush or
Trip.
Trip?
I liked
They ruined
Trip.
Bush by making him Trip.
No. You ruined Trip when you compare it. But I could, now that you mentioned it, I'm like, yeah, he could totally play George Bush in a movie.
Yeah.
Well, I love season 4 of Enterprise. I'll definitely throw that out.
You and me both, brother.
Yeah. So I don't know. The Section 31 stuff might have been like the scene where they just talk about it on the bridge. Maybe that was a little farther than I would have gone if I was writing this episode. But beyond that, I was fine with what we saw.
I mean, the only way I can really justify it would be if you have the entire ship sworn to secrecy about, hey, not only can you not tell anyone about the Mirror Universe, you also can't tell anyone about Section 31. Like, these people are going to know everything by the time they get off the ship.
They have a spore drive and nobody else in the Federation knows about a spore drive in any of the other shows we've watched.
They might know about it.
They keep secrets.
They might just never mention it.
Right, I mean, like, something like this where clearly there's no way that the makers of the original series could have thought to include spore drive references, so if we just assume it wasn't relevant to the plots at hand, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I know, like, sometimes the military does make entire ships swear secrecy. Like, I have a relative who was on the USS Long Beach, one of the early nuclear-powered ships in the United States Navy, and he wasn't allowed to discuss it because they didn't want anyone, probably the Russians, to know about their nuclear reactor on the ship. So
maybe Section 31 is just planning to kill everybody on this once their mission is done.
That would be dark.
I don't think they're trying to go quite that dark.
Nah.
On that note, is like after you kind of get over the idea of how they're doing a very weird take on Section 31, I kind of like these Section 31 people. Like they don't seem totally villainous.
No,
I never saw them as. I always thought they were doing the right thing.
They
think they're saving the Federation.
Well, most
they're a little arch.
Yeah,
they're a little arch. I gotta say, I love George Al's attitude.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun to have somebody who seems to be enjoying it.
Yeah.
And interestingly noted, talking about the potential that the Starfleet is a little compromised by them, she does say, she's like, I like this Section 31 and Starfleet. She mentioned those in the same breath.
Yeah.
Or she's like, I'm starting to like them, or something like that.
Because apparently, like, this Section 31 is a faction of Starfleet, which
I can also see how just coming out of a big war, Section 31 would probably have a lot more power at the end of a big war than it would have during a long
Original
stretch
point,
of
a big war that they were on the cusp of losing.
Yes.
And I got something to add to that we will touch on later in the Easter eggs section.
Okay. I also liked Giorgio doesn't wear her badge. She keeps it in a pouch. All the other everyone, they've got these badges, and she doesn't wear it. What does that mean symbolically? You know,
that's kind of like, what's the point of a badge? But I mean, I guess like you see like police detectives have like the badge they pull out of their pocket.
Yeah. Well, they're also communicators. When Tyler slapped his, it was a communicator.
That was their little next gen proto-tech.
And it really confused Pike when he was like, "What the hell kind of communicator is that?"
I thought that was almost a little overdone. That he didn't just whatever.
Why'd you slap your boob?
Yeah.
Slap your boob. Giorgio is clearly the loose cannon in Section 31, although not. I say loose cannon. She's not like going against everything Leland said. But she can clearly talk trash to him and get away with it. She's probably so valuable with her knowledge and abilities that I almost feel like she's a freelancer for them, whether they want her to be or not.
Well, she already had blackmail on Leyland.
Yep.
That's gonna be.
She's got compromat.
I love the dirty trick society is being dirty tricked. I like that. I love the irony of that.
A taste of your own medicine.
Yes, that was sweet.
So seeing Section 31 Giorgio now in 2 different episodes, how do you feel about where she is positioned to now be probably the star of the Section 31 show that they said that she'll be a part of?
Dramatically, very happy with it. Pulling back and looking at sort of Star Trek as a concept, it bugs me that Starfleet has let the genocidal ruler of an alternate universe take on such a position of power. But I love Michelle Yeoh.
I'm kind of where you are. I love the actress. And the portrayal is the performance is fine, but I never bought that Starfleet would put her in charge of the mission to go destroy Kronos in the end of season 1, and I really don't buy that they would put her in Section 31 and certainly have her on this loose of a leash if she is in Section 31. And whereas again, I kind of wonder if there was an alternate version of season 1 where it was Lorca who got rescued, because a lot of this would make way more sense with Lorca, who had actually put his life on the line to save Federation colonies and Federation starships again and again during the Klingon War. Yes, he lied to them. Yes, he's an evil mirror universe guy, but he had actually saved a whole lot of Federation lives, and in very ingenious ways. So the idea that he would be recruited into Section 31 made some sort of sense to me. I still don't necessarily buy it, but that's where we are. We got to move on. I'm clearly, I don't think we're going to get any more justification than we already had. So I'm just going to all right, this is where we are.
I can't make up the notion that they thought they'd have her on a tighter leash.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had her out blackmailing Klingons, and there was no other agents keeping an eye on her.
That's true.
What, did you have a...
Well, I almost wonder if it's because, if they use her because she's so morally compromised that she's willing to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely going to be willing to do anything, no matter how dirty the job is, but at the same time, she's also going to be probably trying to betray you in the process.
Yeah, what are her motivations? What is she getting out of this,
If on the main show, I almost feel like they need to have somebody who's, embedded as, her minder. Who's, if she tries anything that goes beyond what our own standards are, kill her.
We have a button we push and her head pops
out.
Right, they need
Suicide Squad. That's Ash Tyler needs to be the Rick Flag of Suicide Squad.
All right, see that would make her a lot more acceptable.
We're not talking about the movie. We're talking about the Ostrander comics. Go read that stuff. It's a lot better. But
but yeah, as it is, it's if you're gonna have a really scary organization, she's a good person to have on board. If you want to have the notion that some principles guide it, then they need to have better control on her, probably.
Yeah, you make Ash Tyler the Rick Flag
Yeah.
of the Section 31.
I imagine that's the kind of
Suicide
detail.
Squad show.
It's the kind of detail they may go into on the show,
So,
but like you say, they do seem to be moving on, not too worried about the fine points of it.
Yeah, well, honestly, I would be a lot more accepting of the whole thing if they just revealed, yeah, we've got this little button we can push and her head pops off. You know, I would go, okay, good, I'm as happy as I'm ever going to be with this.
The Section 31 showrunners, Erica LaPolte and Bowie Kim, y'all go read some Ostrander Suicide Squad comics. You could probably buy some of them collected from Rogues Gallery Comics and Games if you're ever in Round Rock, Texas.
Deep cut. I like it.
So enough about Section 31 and Giorgio. Let's talk about the mycelial network and May and Culber and that whole story. I guess the big thing out of that is Culber is back. We have the resurrected Dr. Hugh Culber.
Yeah. I thought, I mean, you know, it's always going to be ludicrous when you bring the dead back to life, but as far as a science fiction show goes, this is as good a way to do it as any. It was exciting, it was interesting, it was dramatic. I honestly thought, oh, he's just coming back for a guest star position there at the end. I honestly thought that was going to be it for him, and then they had Tilly say, no, we're going to tech the tech, and I'm like, yes, tech the tech, Star Trek forever.
Unfortunately, this entire season, they've been putting Wilson Cruz's names and... putting his name in the opening credits.
Oh, okay. I hadn't been paying that much attention.
So
I knew he was back this season, but I
didn't know. Some type
know.
of return.
I didn't know if it was going to be a one episode thing or not. But.
I was actually hoping that he wouldn't just be back alive on the ship, though. And my first time watching this, I was a little disappointed that was the case. I kind of thought it'd be cooler to, include him, but maybe he's... I don't know. Maybe like how May was connected to Tilly. Maybe he also appears to Stamets as like this intangible vision that's still connected to him, or maybe
Just go to the Dagobah system,
right?
Or like a Force ghost.
Yeah. I like that they did bring him back, because in most shows that's a one episode gig, and then he goes and then they don't really bring him back. Any other show, I mean, that's the classic way you make TV. So to actually bring him back is more dramatic and complicated and something that you don't expect from a show. And then also, as one of my friends had pointed out, that was really pissed off when he died in the first season, was that, of course they're going to kill off the gay black man, and maybe, and if they keep him around as like some wise counselor in the,
and becomes the alternate trope, the magical Negro, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's much better if I much prefer the way they handled this, because that's outside of the cliches and doing something different.
I think the Trek is actually pretty good at resurrections. For the most part,
they don't do it that often, and that's the big thing.
Too often.
You can't play that card too often.
Yes,
I liked Spock's return. I think Culber's return was imaginatively handled. I'm trying to think what other big ones they've had.
Arguably Dax.
Yeah,
arguably
built
kind
into
of the Trill thing.
Well, I mean, it was one we could see coming, but it's still
it's
like Time Lords. They regenerate.
Yeah, but it's still a resurrection of the character.
I suppose Tasha Yar too was a clever way to do that.
Yes.
Even though it wasn't really her, but
right. But they managed to effectively do
it. It was her on the Enterprise in the Enterprise C episode yesterday.
Oh, that's
Enterprise.
true. Yeah, that was Yar.
We just don't see that. We just don't see Yar again after that one. But she does get a one episode resurrection.
I had an interesting thought though. Is I liked Culber on previous episodes. I'm happy to have him back. But the last several times we've seen him have all been very sort of touching, lovey-dovey, you were my heart sort of moments. And what I liked about him was honestly when they were a little bit scrappier as a couple, as in their normal state, before they were torn apart. So I wanted to get back. I'm more interested in him when he gets back to the status quo, when we see him in some capacity return to his normal life on the ship.
Yeah. Well, Dave, that was on your wish list. I remember, for things you wanted to see in season 2. I know 2 of them came true in this episode. You wanted more. You wanted more Cornwell, and you also wanted to see an ongoing, stable relationship.
Yep.
And I think we're
hopefully we'll get
now.
it. Yeah.
Actually, that'd be really good, because then Stamets can work on. I I got my love brought back from the dead, and now I'm resenting him, and there could be some guilt in there, and that could be some great character stuff.
They should really play with that. I think that'd be an interesting notion.
Also, Tyler killed him, and Tyler's on the ship, and that could
was
be interesting.
that was awkward when Tyler is on the bridge, and then Stamets shows up and he sees him. And he's like,
what if Tyler had been like, "Hey,
what's up, bro?"
oh,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh man, Stamets, I haven't seen you since." Oh.
Yeah.
You know, in the mycelial network, his mycelial iteration was almost didn't look like him to me because
Colbert?
I don't know if I'm just so used to him being that very clean shaven look that he has or what, but like
the big hair that he's
the hair is like he's usually got a shaved head basically.
So
right?
I'm pretty pissed off at CBS because they released these pictures that I choose not to look at. But like when I was scrolling through Twitter, because I have to promote Tex-Trek on Twitter, so just doing my job, and I scroll past and I see people sharing this picture of what looks like this Afro-Latino man with a big hair and a beard and like a Starfleet uniform, and I'm like, I hope that wasn't like Colbert and like a physical body that he might have been like, he's been stranded in the mycelial network all this time, because I don't want to know this before this episode. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking that has got to be exactly what that is. And sure enough, it was, and I hate that was spoiled.
Yeah. Was it spoiled by people, or was it spoiled by, like, CBS?
No, it was like an official, like, CBS picture that, like, people were, like, sharing it on Twitter. Like, hey, what do y'all think about this picture?
Yeah. I think it's not unusual to have that kind of stills released.
I didn't watch the episode until tonight, so I had seen on Facebook sci-fi channel's website and stuff say Colbert's back, and so I definitely knew that was coming. I didn't know if he was back for one episode only or if he was coming back for a longer thing. And I did kind of, once I knew that Colbert was in here somewhere, figure, oh, Colbert's the monster. But I figured.
But right after he died, that episode when it aired, immediately after it aired. On After Trek, they had the then showrunners, Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harbert, saying, like, he's not gone. We're going to have more of Dr. Colbert. Yeah, and they were trying to get out in front of, being accused of the what they call the bury your gay trope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of wish that they hadn't have pushed that so much, because I would have liked more surprises in the story. I understand that's a thing that people are frustrated that it happens in television. We also have like the trope of fridging female characters. What famously started in the Ron Mars Green Lantern comics in the 90s when they had this new character, Kyle Rayner. They gave him this really cool girlfriend character and then immediately killed her just to give some emotional depth to Kyle Rayner and flesh him out.
Somebody had just watched Seven.
Well, that was a spoiler for Seven. I haven't seen that movie, but I've been hearing spoilers for it for like 20 years.
Yeah,
so.
I can't apologize for that. Although I actually only meant it on the level of a dark serial killer thing.
But that's what we see that a lot typically happen with like female love interests, and then I don't watch a whole lot of modern TV that isn't Star Trek, but what I'm told is that happens a lot with gay characters now. So I am glad that like we're not seeing that this is actually going to be like an ongoing character. I just would have preferred the surprises of just having the story unfold naturally to me. But
I knew Colbert was coming back at some point this season, but I would have preferred to not know if this was going to be that the episode where he comes back. Would have been nice, but I waited a few days to watch the episode, and I surfed Facebook. So
I think that it's kind of
only have myself to blame.
It's sort of on us. Like if you step off into social media, you're taking your chances. If you watch a show that's a post-mortem on an episode, you're taking your chances. It'd be ideal if they didn't, but I get why they did it on that one.
But that being said, when I did see the resurrection and everything, I bought the sci-fi logic of it more than I thought I would. I was like, well, yeah, this is just as believable as Spock on the Genesis planet.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was kind of happy when you have that shot near the end of like the two actors embrace when he is fully returned, and you get the sense of how happy they are. It's like everyone's experienced like the loss of a loved one. I think that's probably the most horrible thing that happens in the human experience is when someone we love about dies, and so to be able to have someone back that's just universally understandable is the
absolutely
greatest thing ever.
And
you can't help but be happy for this character.
And
Yes.
you said, I mean, the social commentary or the addressing the human condition is very simple in this episode. They state it right out. We don't leave a man behind. It's the central message of most Stargate SG-1 episodes. And yes, it's simplistic, and yes, it's obvious, and yes, it's something we see in most television, but we see these people put enormous amounts of effort and risk and danger just to rescue the people they love.
Right.
Again and again and again. And I have to admit, I really enjoy, I'm a sucker for those kinds of
And the
stories.
season arc is about, rescuing Spock.
Yeah.
Because, Burnham and Pike both care about Spock.
So we go to rescue Tilly. We have to rescue Culber. We're going to find a way, even though physics says we can't, because as we keep saying, the thermodynamics matter is neither created nor destroyed. He already has a dead body in this universe. So we've got to come up with
Dave called that. That might be the way that Culber could exist in the mycelial network.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you remember saying that?
No. But I did want to mention, they have that visual motif in the opening credits of the tether connecting.
Yeah.
And I noticed that this episode, I don't know if this was particularly intentional, had two other instances of similar things. The connected hands between Stamets and Culber, remembered from a Night at the Opera, I think.
You also see Stamets and Burnham hold hands when they first cross over.
And then there's the pinky swear.
And there's also the tractor beam tether things that connect the ships.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's like a great deal to be gleaned from that, but it definitely seemed to be a thing here. If only the same people, the same Starfleet that would really go to those lengths to save Spock, to save Tilly, didn't also have a Section 31.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Section 31 was trying to help save the ship, too, which was interesting. Rather than just be the evil bad guys like Marcus in Star Trek Into Darkness, they are trying to help the Federation in their own little twisted...
war with the Klingons is inevitable!
Speaking of the Bush Doctrine...
Yeah.
But...
Well...
go ahead.
Maybe there's something, and you could read too much into it too. Of we have on an individual level, individuals can choose to work together, but somehow when you get a big government involved, and that could be some kind of nefarious propaganda, or the writers themselves may not realize all the propaganda that's gone into that idea, or
just subconsciously picked up on it,
or maybe that's not it. But I was like, it does make sense. I mean, think about anybody who goes to work and loves all their coworkers but has doubts about the big corporation they work for.
Absolutely.
Is that not a normal experience? So the idea that this crew could be that tight-knit and really care about each other, but that Section 31 could exist, is not necessarily a contradiction.
Oh, it's very much a reflection of who we are, and it's just that, I want Trek to be maybe a few notches more aspirational, is my only objection to it. Since Next Generation really seemed to be the greatest fulfillment of that, and that's like 100 years out, though, I think that's why this can function.
Yeah.
Except in Next Generation, we still have that prime directive problem.
Yeah.
That... we don't know what to... We've solved all our problems as humanity, but we don't know how to help other people solve them without being assholes. So therefore, we won't help them solve them because we don't want to be assholes.
I mean, I kind of can at least get that there may be some unsolvable problems in a universe of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Yeah. And that may be one of them, and that that's the lesser of two evils, even in a quasi-utopian future.
And also from a writing standpoint... by having that rule in place, you give your characters heroic moments when Picard can be like, no, the right thing to do is to break the Prime Directive, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And Star Trek does kind of have that little bit of rebellious nature baked into sometimes you got to steal the Enterprise and go rescue Spock.
Yes. So...
we mentioned the tractor beams, and I have to just run a quick mention on a tech level. Have we ever seen tractor beams like that?
No, that was really cool, where it had 3 probes go and attached to the Discovery, and then lock on 3 different tractor beams to each. So you would think that must be a super tractor beam. That's
right, or much more stabilizing or something like that. Yeah, they didn't explain it, but it looked dope.
Yeah, looked very cool. Oh, and also on the Section 31 ship, we see... Well, no, I'm going to save this for the Easter eggs.
All right.
I could also... the nerd in me was like, oh, I bet what they're doing is they're boosting the ship's structural integrity field with those little gadgets so that it can handle the stress of being yanked by the
That was the Geordie LaForge in you?
Yeah, that was the Geordie LaForge in me. Was totally nerding up on, this could be this and this could be this.
Even notice that it's like the tech did the tech, and
yeah.
now we're back where story.
Whereas the later on when they're like, tachyons, it's a quantum, so it must be a quantum phenomenon. I'm like, tachyon just means faster than light, so it isn't necessarily quantum.
So on that note...
Wait, hold on.
Okay, Dave, what do you got? Then we're going to talk about tachyons.
All right, I was just going to quick segue
The clock is ticking. We're going to follow the mycelial network.
Oh my God.
Spit it out.
So there was two other tech things I wanted to mention in there. First of all, that they brought up a nebula escape a la Wrath of Khan. Just along the lines of the transporter thing, or the tractor beam thing reminded me. Although I don't know, I didn't think shuttles had armaments to ignite the clouds or whatever in a nebula.
No, we've seen shuttles that have like torpedoes.
Next
on them.
generation shuttles certainly.
I thought it was only like the runabouts. I thought runabouts and stuff.
No, they had shuttles with phasers. And
I don't know where they store the torpedoes.
Yeah. But don't ask too many questions.
They have micro torpedoes on the runabouts, but that are like that long or something. They're just incredibly small. So
yeah, but in Star Trek Insurrection, didn't we see torpedoes on a shuttle in the beginning when they're trying to capture data?
Yeah, I assumed those were the micro torpedoes, but
that works. Yeah.
All right, let's go and jump to what you were talking about.
Well, I was going to say that now that we have the tachyon mystery, which I was kind of surprised with Discovery to go that kind of Star Trek quasi-science, talk about technobabble stuff like tachyons, and not call it like some type of more generic name, like along the lines like the Red Burst. Let's call it like
Red Matter.
We've talked about how they're a little bit more like Battlestar Galactica, and they don't get too jargony ever.
They're like, we have like mega radiation particles, something like that. But yeah, so they're talking about how there could be time travel or cloaking devices, or maybe something as simple as transporters, being used with the Red Burst, and that might be connected to Spock. So
this is going to go to my theory that connects it to the movies.
Yeah, but like, what would be the?
No, it doesn't make sense. I'm just saying. Just saying it's going to turn out to be right somehow.
Maybe like in the Kelvin movies, like Leonard Nimoy Spock, who died, didn't really die. He turned into a red angel and then came back through Red Bursts.
It's quite possible. There was red matter. There was time travel in that. Yeah. There was Spock involved. I'm just saying a lot of the pieces on the chessboard are the same.
Where do you got, Holly?
Somewhere Cybok has to show up, even though.
Oh my God!
Just because, how can we have a story where Spock's family is all searching for like angels in space, and we don't deal with Cybok. Cybok has got to show up somewhere in this season.
That would be so bold if they used Cybok.
I love the idea.
They have to.
Yes.
Now that you've mentioned it, I love the idea because I like when people take a concept that's kind of otherwise rather disposable or even a bad concept and find the good stuff in it and try to make it work.
Yes, I did in my Star Trek role-playing game, a sequel to Star Trek V that was beautiful and wonderful and one of the best games I've ever run.
Nice.
And yeah, it was built on Star Trek V, one of the worst Star Trek stories ever.
Holly's right, though. Thematically, it completely lines up with the questions that are being thrown around of faith.
And we have Michael looking for Spock. I mean, somewhere it just seems like Cybok. How can we have all of Spock's family show up in this story and be dealing with this theme and not have Cybok all season?
It's going to be weird if they don't.
It makes it weird that in Star Trek V that Spock's never like, brother, your quest to find Shakari reminds me of when I sought out the Red Angels with our sister Michael.
Yes, though I didn't violate quite as much neutral zone treaty as you did.
But yeah, I would totally love for them to use Cybok in Discovery. I think he's like a pretty neat character and one of the more interesting Star Trek antagonists.
Yeah.
Definitely more interesting than anyone who came later, who for the most part were just copies of Khan.
Yeah.
One of them was a literal copy of Khan.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would touch Star Trek V at all in Discovery. It would just...
That's the most likely reason not to do it, is just that it is universally disliked. nearly universally.
And they do seem to have a huge emphasis this season on make the Trekkies happy. That is a definite underlying theme.
They are
But this
listening
is
to
a
feedback.
prequel, so you can't have the audience need to see Star Trek V in order to appreciate this story in any way. So
True, yeah, they want this to be new audience friendly.
Yeah.
so they can bring up Sybok and they don't have they can bring him in and they don't have to have you.
Well,
have
yeah, but would you
seen
have
Star
closure
Trek
for
V.
Sybok without having seen Star Trek V? Do you need to see Star Trek V to understand the end of Sybok? Because otherwise, assuming you have audience members who've never heard of Star Trek V, they're going to be wondering, who's this character? He's introduced, and then they don't seem to wrap up his storyline. I mean, you'd have to give him enough of an arc that would justify his existence entirely independent of Star Trek V.
I haven't seen Star Trek in 5 in so long that I actually don't remember what initially motivates him to do what he's doing. But, like, is it possible that some... What is it?
He has, like, visions from God, just like Spock is having from the Red Angel.
Does it happen in what would generally be the present of that movie, or had it happened to him, like, decades ago?
They don't go into that much
Before
detail.
the movie started.
Yeah.
So
it could
if
have
they
been a
wanted
week
to-
before or a year.
I picture it like how in the motion picture, the other bad Star Trek movie,
Yep.
when Spock, even though people have turned around on it in recent years, but how Spock is getting like that connection to V'ger. I just picture something like Sybok had like a similar thing going on.
Yeah.
Well, is it possible? Let's just throw out a hypothetical here. He shows up. He is actually more of a traditional Vulcan when we see him, and the events of this storyline set him off on a quest where he's like, I'm going to go off and see if I can find more of these Red Angels or other examples along these lines.
I don't think they're going to invest screen time.
No, but I'm just saying
into
on a purely
Sybok's origin
hypothetical.
story.
On a purely hypothetical, what if they did it level?
I mean, that'd be cool. if
Okay.
you wanna
As
write
from
that
a fan service
fiction.
level,
yeah,
that
would
would
the
be
continuity work? Yeah, that's all.
that would work.
But you'd kind of leave the audience who didn't know about Star Trek V wondering, who's that guy? When is he showing up in season 3?
They want to really
Or-
boost those rentals and digital downloads.
You know what would be like the total cock tease, because they keep drawing out this thing with Spock. We still haven't seen Spock,
Yeah.
but
a little frustrating to me, by the way.
but what if when we finally do meet Spock, it's actually Sybok, and that's why he has a
man.
beard in the promotional material. We see Spock with a beard.
would love it.
That would be...
As much as I want to
Being-
see Spock, I would, because
Wow.
Spock is so well represented in Trek canon. I actually like the idea of a character redemption more than I like for Sybok than I like at seeing
I
Spock.
think that would eclipse Last Jedi for enraging
Oh,
fans.
yeah.
Oh,
you
man.
can't promise us Spock for a whole season and then give us Sybok. That is, I mean,
You can
that
already
is-
see the shirts being printed
Yeah,
up. They
yeah.
But
promised
you
us
really,
Spock.
all we
Yes.
care about is, do we have a good story? That's
Yeah.
what's
That,
important.
that's all I care about, and people who are like actually watching the show for the content care about. But yeah, some people are just gonna jump on an excuse to bash Discovery if they threw in Sybok.
Man.
But
What-
go
I
ahead.
kind of tied into this, but bringing it more back on topic. At the end, we have Michael having a little monologue about, basically God. Did anyone have any thoughts on that, or?
Right, she said she would. She represents a fairly common, I'm going to say, atheist perspective of wishing for the peace and like serenity of having faith. Several times in the episode, she mentions it. And as a quick aside, I want to mention Pike himself has also any number of times mentioned church or said Godspeed.
Well, apparently Pike goes to church with his cousin, which to me is weird to have in the secular humans of Star Trek.
Didn't Pike say that his father was like a professor of religion or something?
Yeah,
like
comparative religion.
Comparative
Comparative
religion.
religion.
And science.
Yeah.
So I could totally believe in the Star Trek universe that certain forms of religion would survive,
Sure.
and that would make sense.
Yeah.
They may be very different than
Pro-
we conceive of them now.
I know-
Probably not fundamentalism as much, but a lot of, even now, a lot of the interfaith stuff, progressive stuff, I could totally believe that stuff would survive into the
I know a lot of
23rd
people.
century.
There's been a lot of comments and stuff I've seen online or heard on podcasts and various outlets. There is a desire to see a more characters of faith, or I guess specifically human characters of faith in Star Trek.
Which they've almost never done.
Yeah, I personally like the depiction of humans in Star Trek that to me, as someone who has often felt oppressed by religion and the time and place in which I live, I kind of like that idea of society that has freed itself from what, to me, personally feels kind of like the shackles of centuries of religion. So this is weird to me. I know a lot of people want to see this, so I'm happy for them. I just kind of like the more Roddenberry secular human of the future type of approach.
See, I want to see more diversity in the humans, because if we live in a society where, say, if you're Klingon, you can practice your religion on the ship in the 24th century, or if you're other civilizations and you come and you're Bajoran, you can practice your religion.
They've almost never mentioned any specific faith in Star Trek as far as any crew member belonging to it. Kirk mentioned having God.
Chakotay had religious.
Chakotay was the only one I could think of off the top of my head. Yeah. But in Who Mourns for Adonais, Kirk says we find the one God quite sufficient. But
we also said that about the Doomsday Machine when he says just one is quite efficient. Right.
It's it feels like a bit of a token thing. It could well be that simply that there is room in the Federation for it, but broadly among humanity or on Earth, that religion has died out.
That's how I tend to view it in my headcanon, is that the religion, there's like baseball, religion is probably still out there in these little corners here and there, but that it's not a terribly popular thing among humans at this point.
Yeah.
But to say that it's not there at all, I think, is actually kind of going against the whole infinite diversity and infinite combinations thing. To say that it's dead. I think that's, to say that, just in the same way if we said, all that Native American religion and spirituality, that's dead in the 24th century. That's harsh. And I think it's kind of harsh if you said it about Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or any of that, to say that it's completely dead. So I kind of feel like it, in my headcanon, it's out there somewhere. It's just not super popular.
That's a pretty good way to make it work. But what do you got?
But my objection is that if Star Trek is really supposed to be aspirational and it's showing us who we could be, then part of what Star Trek needs to show us desperately in these political times is it kind of needs to keep alive that American mid-century dream of the plural society. So how do you have a plural society where you are going to have people that you work with that are Southern Baptist, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, no religion, and they all have to work together in a plural society. So if we have Star Trek just make religion dead, but we don't have it embody this plural society, it does not help us.
It's not reflecting
of 21st century humans learn to live in a plural society. It shows us that people who are different than us, that have different traditions and different beliefs, are backwards, as opposed to people that we can work with and be part of a plural society together.
I agree with you, but traditionally how they do that is they use alien characters to represent the diversity we experience on Earth is often represented in Star Trek by having people from different worlds and stuff.
It's kind of more visually exciting. But,
and less likely to upset the audience.
Right.
So also, Roddenberry has said several, made statements to the effect of, in the future we all get our shit together.
Yeah.
I can't show you exactly how we do that because, I don't have those solutions. I just want to show you that it can be done.
And he does take things too far sometimes. Like I agree with Roddenberry on how he wanted religion depicted in Star Trek. I disagree with him on how he said about an episode of The Next Generation, he stated that children shouldn't be sad and grieve when their parents die. They should be so emotionally mature, even at a child level in the future, that they can just process that and get over it. Which is ridiculous.
90-something-year-olds aren't that emotionally mature.
To take it back to Discovery specifically, if Pike does represent the closest thing that we have on the bridge to a person of faith, everybody likes Pike right now. Yeah. So they are giving a positive representation, even if they've never shown him praying or anything. But it does occur to me that thematically, they've just talked about this season as being sort of a religious science versus faith thing. And I have to say, I don't really feel like that's been explored very deeply so far. There have been matters of the planet with the survivors from the 22nd century.
from the 21st.
21st century is the closest thing I can think of it. But aside from bringing up faith and things like that, I don't feel that they've really done much of a deep dive.
I will say it's not deep. It's more of a theme
Right.
than a message.
Right.
Like, this was all about going into the hell and literally pulling the dead out of hell from an afterlife back into the normal world. That's, on a religious level, huge. But they're doing it in a, it's the theme of it, not there's no particular message they're offering about afterlives or immortal souls in this story. So they don't say everybody who dies ends up in the mycelium network. Which I
kind of was thinking that they might go that.
I would have got if there was anything that I thought they shied away from, that they should have gone bigger. They should have done that, but the implications for that would be huge across all of Star Trek.
Yeah, and then it kind of makes it harder to when they eventually do have to finally close the door permanently on the mycelial network, or I don't know if it'll get destroyed or if just their connection will be severed or what.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty big thing to drop into Star. Yes, there is an afterlife, and this is what it is. That would be huge. If I was running the show, I'd probably pull that trigger just because I like pulling the big triggers and like that. But I can totally see why the writer said, no, only Culber ended up in the mycelial network.
I kind of would disagree with you on that, on giving an answer to that in Star Trek, and it goes back to that getting along in the plural society, because when it comes down to it, part of our clue is that most religions have fairly similar sets of morals. I mean, something similar to the Golden Rule, which secular humanism is also founded on. Mm-hmm. And we kind of know what we should do to treat each other right in this life, even though we really don't do it. And that's why I don't think the new humans will ever exist. But where religion disagrees, of course, is those things that we can't answer. What is the nature of God? What happens to us when we die? And all of that stuff. Right. So if you're going to have a plural society where you have many different beliefs and many different religions...
You can't say what the afterlife is?
Yeah, you can't define the afterlife, but you can focus on how do we learn to live as humans or as a multi-species federation. How do we learn to live with that plural and diversity that honors and sees everyone for who they are and works with them, even though we don't all have the answers.
It would have been interesting if, say, Culber had been a person with religious convictions, and he was like, when I died, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
They could still pull that trigger next week.
Yeah,
it's possible.
I'm not saying they're going to, but
that's true.
They could still trot that out.
On the other hand, though, I would be perfectly happy if they just never had any more humans ever talk about religion.
That's not fun.
But I'm somewhat with you, Fatheree, in the sense that what was that episode, Believers of Next Generation? That's my aspirational episode where Picard lectures them about casting off religion.
I mean, I'm
to the proto-Vulcans.
I'm frustrated that I can't go to the liquor store on Sundays where I live. I've had it with religion.
Right. I think
that was the final straw.
You make a good case, Father.
Of all the atrocities religion has been committed in the name of God or gods, that was the liquor store is closed on Sunday. That was it.
But let us know what you think. Feel free to comment through our various channels on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, our website. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the comments we've received recently. I think Dave has a couple of comments from our YouTube channel that he's going to
let's do this. So this one, I think, Father, this is from the gentleman who messaged us last week, Michael Stepniak, let's say.
Yeah.
So he said, thanks.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for another great episode and for the shout out, he says. And he specifically wants to thank Holly. Says there are a great deal of aesthetic analysis and critiques of disco from a film nerd perspective, i.e. camera angles, trick shots, CG, lighting, etc. The discussion of Trek from a sociological, ethical, academic point of view has been missing in the larger conversation, and I truly appreciate it. Looking forward to next week. So hopefully he'll be digging on what we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. He goes on a little bit. He says, not to get too long, didn't read, but on the subject of the spore drive, I agree. I do not understand any sense of urgency to get rid of it, and I have good reasons. He says either the giant mycelium-obsessed tardigrade is a unique entity, or it is rare enough and smart enough to stay away from Starfleet. He says, although that blob forming around Tilly looks suspiciously familiar. Goes on to say, either way, Stamets is the only being in the known universe to possess the necessary DNA to operate the spore drive, so the tech basically dies with Stamets, as it becomes both impossible and unethical. Unless he says Section 31 is torturing a tardigrade somewhere, and that's how Sloane keeps ending up in Bashir's quarters.
Michael, I really like that, and I really like that you and I are on the same page as far as they can keep the spore drive around for a little bit. And this episode didn't completely close that door, so it is possible that they use it some more. I still think we haven't gotten to that final resolution on why the spore drive was never an option for Voyager to use to return from the Delta Quadrant. But, and also, yeah, that is great. If Sloane has a tardigrade that he's torturing, and that's how he's showing up on DS9, that is some awesome canon connections, sir.
Finally, more torture in Star Trek.
Well, if it's Section 31, the more sinister Section 31 of the 21st century. Yeah. And then, Dave, what else we got?
Right. This is a shorter comment from Jude Beacom. Nice compliment here. You guys are the best at what you do. Tip of the hat. Thank you, Jude. And then says, in DS9's Take Me to the Holosuite, O'Brien gears up for the big game by chewing Scotch-flavored gum. One of my favorite scenes in Star Trek. So this is, of course, a reference to our question last week.
Our gum conversation.
Yeah. Is gum a thing in the future? And here is at least one concrete example. Y'all came through for us with it. Did you say that you looked it up on Memory Alpha and there's an entry on gum?
Yeah, there is. And there's quite a few episodes that have referenced gum, though not as memorably as Scotch flavored gum.
Although it makes no sense for an Irishman to want Scotch whiskey flavored gum. He'd be more of a Jameson drinker or something.
You'd probably rather have it as Scotch than as gum. Gum is a terrible thing.
That sounds horrible.
Religion in the future, okay. Gum in the future, no, we don't buy it.
That would be a type
gum is awful.
That'd be a type of gum I wouldn't be able to buy on Sundays in the state of Texas.
On the Starship Texas, we cannot.
Replicators will not make Scotch flavor.
We're going to have to use the slingshot effect around the sun so we can travel back to a previous day so we can get his Scotch go.
Yeah, but thank both of you for the awesome comments.
Yeah, much appreciated.
And everyone else who's commented, we love you being part of the conversation. Also, Michael Stepniak had another comment where he pointed out, I missed an Easter egg last week. There is a mention of 47, the magic Star Trek number, in last week's episode that got by me.
How did you miss that, Father? I know that is your favorite thing in the entire world.
I don't know. I'm sorry that it happened. I'll try to do better from now
Frankly,
on.
you disgust me.
But
47 latches for you.
You're going to tell us where it was, right?
No, you have to rewatch the episode yourself. He actually gave the exact timestamp, but I forgot to make note of it. So just go look at last week's YouTube video. He left it on YouTube, and you'll see the comment there. But anyways, we have some Easter eggs for this week's episode that I'm going to run through real fast. Mm-hmm. So, number one being Cestus 3. Pike says to Leland that last time I saw you were on Cestus 3 up to your neck in alligators or something like that. Funny that he mentions alligators, because that is in fact the planet that was home to a Federation colony that will eventually be destroyed by the Gorn, and where Kirk will have an epic battle with a Gorn in the original series episode Arena.
Do we presume that he actually meant that there had been some skirmishes with the Gorn?
No, because they didn't make first contact with the Gorn until Arena.
So is that just an in-jokey thing? It doesn't work as continuity?
They might have been actual alligators on Cestus 3.
They were baby Gorn who crawl on all four legs, and they didn't recognize them as being sapient.
That sounds like something that would have occurred on Enterprise.
Something like that kind of did happen on Enterprise with the hatchery, with the Archer and the little cricket babies.
Oh, yeah.
The Zindi insectoid babies.
Yes. Oh, I tried to forget that Doctrine season.
Then... Another Easter egg, we also have the comm badge.
Oh, yeah.
Which Tyler used, which really confused Pike. I'm unsure why he was so confused by the comm badge being the communicator.
It's an inside joke. I mean, that's a meta reference to Next Generation's comm badges.
We literally have, Bluetooth Starfleet badge communicators now.
That it's still cool technology. as times change, you still got to keep with the traditions in these. Buck Rogers still has to have a jetpack, even if we invent teleportation technology.
I will say in that scene, it explained something that bugged me at the beginning of the episode. Was like, all right, we're going to send a liaison over to get your info on Spock. And I'm like, Giorgio's right there. Why not just tell Giorgio? Why ships Tyler in from who knows where? Oh, turns out, no, they've been shadowing the whole the shuttle and Discovery with this cloaked ship. They're literally just like 5 minutes away. So it makes perfect sense by the time the end of the episode.
That allows us to segue into the next Easter egg, which is that Section 31 ship cloaking device. It kind of had projected an image of an asteroid.
Yeah.
So in Season 4 of Enterprise, we do see Romulans using a similar type of cloaking technology where they actually disguise a Romulan drone ship with the holographic imagery of they can like change it to different other ships where it's like disguised as an Andorian ship or a Vulcan ship. And so that was kind of
proto-cloaking concepts.
It's where like maybe if you're still going to get like a reading on a ship, it's just like, oh, well, we're just going to look like we're something else.
Yeah.
I missed in this. Was it not like used like an actual cloak?
No, it was an asteroid that turned into a ship.
Okay.
Which I like that.
I do too.
I like that more than if it was just like actually invisible.
It's nice to have some new tricks out there, and not just the same tricks we've been seeing for 50 years.
Right, and it fits kind of within their historical record.
Right. This before cloaking technology became really common. This was a type of precursor to that. And on board that cloaked ship, Giorgio mentions the planet Deneva, which we know will be home to a Federation colony in the original series episode Operation Annihilate. And it's also mentioned a few times in other Trek episodes. I think in Enterprise, also Travis Mayweather's family's shuttle, the Earth cargo ship Horizon, might have been on the cargo run going to the Deneva colony.
All right.
Oh, wow.
That's the fried egg episode.
And finally, we have mention of Article 14. And that is, of course, referring to Article 14 of the Starfleet Charter, I guess. It predates the formation of the Federation, but there is a Article 14, Section 31, and that's kind of where Section 31 gets its permission to operate. And it's been described as kind of desperate times call for desperate measures. This ties into something that Brian was talking about earlier about maybe the reason why we have the sanctioned Section 31 is because we just had a war that destroyed 80% of Starfleet and almost led to an attack on Earth that probably would have been like a successful invasion or annihilation by the Klingon fleet. So,
yeah, that's the sort of situation where, we need certain. We need you to sign off on this, Mr. President, if you want us to save the Federation. I'll sign anything, just save us!
If there was ever a time and place, it would have been Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
But I think that's all we got. We will be back, of course, next week to discuss Season 2, Episode 6, Sounds of Thunder.
Right, about which compares to the title The Sound of Thunder, I think, or A Sound of Thunder.
Yeah.
The Ray Bradbury story, which was like introduced a lot of people to the idea of the time travel butterfly effect, making one small change alters the future, and had people hunting dinosaurs in it. So if there is indeed tachyonic stuff, time travel stuff going on, it could be referencing that, or it could be something completely different.
We'll have to wait and find out. But until then,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.